All right, first question. Who are you and where are you from?
Oh, great question, Zach. Not really sure who I am, but yeah. So my name's Alan Ringvald. I'm from Boston, but by way of Israel and Uruguay. So yeah, I came here when I was like 4 years old, right to Boston from Uruguay, actually. So I hold 3 passports, which is kind of crazy. The Uruguayan one I just recently renewed in case the election went a different way. So now I'm a proud holder of 3. Yeah, grew up in Boston, started a bunch of companies, started my first one when I was in college, sold that one, ended up moving from Boston to San Francisco to work at Google, kind of like early Google days. 2011 is when I started, so early-ish, but not early enough, if you know what I'm saying, to really see the upside of that. Which was it was like an interesting time to be there because half the people had been there long enough to see a real payout, and others hadn't yet. We were all kind of doing the same job, which was kind of funny and interesting. But I did that for about 5 years, then went back to Boston to start up a candy company of all things. So it's called Unreal Candy. The mission and the concept of that company was, could we make the worst for you candies actually healthier,
Right.
and tasting pretty much the same as like Snickers, Reese's, M&Ms, Twix, and all that? And could we make it non-preachy, like from a health perspective? Could we make it just kind of like a cool new brand, but like Trojan horse nutrition, I guess. So that was the concept of that one.
What happened with that one? You're
Yeah.
an insurance exec. You're an insurtech guy right now, and you're telling me you're coming from a candy factory?
I'm coming from a candy factory, Zach. So yeah, I mean, like the idea was that the main founder of the company, the guy that really started it, he had just observed like after Halloween one night just how much crap his kids came back with. And he was like, this is crazy. Like, we need to do something about this. And so it really was a mission from there. I had known him for years. He called me up, when he had the idea. He's like, can you help me with this? So like literally within like a week and a half, I quit Google, moved back to Boston, and started this up with this guy. So it was really interesting. We raised a lot of money. We got into 30,000 stores in 6 months, actually. So did a pretty good job of getting distribution. Because it was kind of like a really good time, because all of these bigger retail chains were starting to realize what they were actually doing and like the types of foods that people were eating, and wanted to fight back somewhat. So they were really excited about us. It was interesting. So we got into all these stores and struggled actually a lot in the early days, because we didn't realize that the real battle happened in store, not getting distribution. It's like once you're in the store, that's when the consumer is making their decision, and they have so many choices.
Sure.
And if you're not, if you're not top of mind, there's no way they're going to pick you up. So ultimately, we realized that we didn't raise enough, even though it was, tens of millions of dollars. Like, we needed to be raising hundreds of millions to compete with Snickers. Like, that's a company that's been around for over 100 years.
How was the candy?
It's pretty good. I gained a ton of weight, obviously, because like trying everything all the time. But it was good. It was just all natural. So there were issues with like honestly, like one of these traditional candy bars can last like 10 years, 15 years, because there's very little real stuff in them. Versus ours was real. So, shelf life was starting to be an issue that we had to work on and all that. But ultimately, the company is doing pretty well, but it wasn't at all that way when we launched, just because people didn't know who we were, even though we brought in a lot of celebrity endorsers, a lot, like too many. It felt like some sort of like crazy ad campaign, like United Nations thing. But yeah.
All right, we're still on the first. That's a hell of a way to answer. Where are you from? And I love it.
Not even Zach. Let me finish. Let me land the plane. So I did that company. It, it did what it did. It's still around. I left. And actually, so like I mentioned, a lot of celebrities, athletes invested. Tom Brady invested in the company, doing Patriots quarterback,
Sure.
then all the Patriots did. I made friends with some of like the younger Patriots players just because they were around a lot. And when I left the company, one of those players approached me and he was like, "Hey, can you help me like with Puma? They gave me this contract and I don't really know what to do about it. Can you like call them?" And I was like, "Don't you have an agent that does that stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, but he's not paying attention to me. Can you just do it?" So I ended up calling Puma, being like, "Hey, Puma, can you like do better than what you're doing now?" And they're like, "Yeah, how about 5 times better?" I was like, "Great." So I hang up the phone and I call the player back. And I'm like, "Hey, I got you 5 times better." He's like, "Oh my God, like you got to do this for me." Like, I was like, "What's this?" And that actually turned into a new company. And the core concept of that, the insight was that even if you're not Tom Brady, there's still a huge fan base for all the players on a team. Like the Patriots have like 10 plus million fans, more than that even. And they do know all the players. So how about directly monetizing and talking to them versus dealing with all these other crazy things? And you see that now all day, every day, but this is 2012, 2013, where
Mhm.
it's like, let's make the non-A player a star on his own platforms and monetize that way. So ran that company. Yeah, so I ran that company for a couple of years, then went off to MIT to grad school, which is how I eventually got into InsurTech, which is what I'm doing now, which is, of course, an obvious jump from Candy.
Yes, yes, yeah. Candy to endorsements to InsurTech. So what do you do? What's your company do, and what are you doing these days?
Yeah, totally. So we are 100% focused on giving insurance brokers. So for people that don't know what that really means, so insurance is kind of broken out as like simply into 2 areas. There's the companies that make the product. So they price the risk. They're the ones that say how much you should be paying on a monthly basis for your car insurance. Those are like your carriers. You see commercials for them all the time. MetLife, Progressive,
Sure.
all that stuff. And then you have the insurance broker. So these are your people that actually talk to the customer, own the customer. They're independent to a carrier. So they really care about giving the customer what they need, not as much like being loyal to a specific carrier. So we work with that insurance broker, the one that actually owns the customer. The crazy part is they're completely underserved from a tech perspective. Even though there's so much money flowing through them, they don't have much available to them, not nearly as much as a carrier. So what we do is we basically try to give as much deep technology that your classic carrier would have to an insurance broker. And specifically what we do is we help that insurance broker understand how best to cross-sell a current customer. Because what we noticed is insurance brokers are obsessed with hunting for new business, which is all well and good, but they don't really realize that there's as much, if not more, potential sitting in their current book. They just don't have the right technology to extract the patterns and really understand what to offer to which customer based on who they are, where they live, how they've behaved.
So
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit deeper with an example.
Yeah, sure. So, typically like your insurance broker, let's say you have one, and let's say that you have home insurance with them.
Yep.
They have blinders on once you're a customer to just renew that home insurance policy. It's how they've been trained. It's how they're incentivized. It's the way of the industry. And you see that all the time. But what we're saying is, yes, let's renew Zach's home insurance policy. Absolutely. But Zach is actually, he's in venture capital and he lives in Baltimore and he's bought these types of products before in the past. And he lives actually not just in Baltimore, but he lives by the water. Yes, I've seen The Wire. I know that I've seen season 2 of the docs, so I know that there's water there. So like knowing all of these things, what else might Zach actually be looking for? So you can think of it as like what we call like a basket technology. It's not like it's a complementary thing. Like what else might complement Zach based on who he is? So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like you're dealing with a ton of data. What was kind of the insight for you to get this thing going?
Yeah, so the company in general.
Yeah, the company in general,
Yeah,
or just what was the spark of the idea that said, "Wow, we got to go
the
build something."
spark of the idea was honestly, it had nothing to do with insurance. It was back when so I ended up going to, like I said, I went to MIT for grad school. I met a lot of smart people there working on really tough problems. And in those conversations, I realized that artificial intelligence, for all the hype that it gets, was and is still is incredibly broken. So most companies say that they need it, say that they want it, but only 3% of enterprises actually use it at scale.
Yep.
So initially the spark was like, it was like a oh shit moment of like AI is talked about, but man, like when you really dig in, most companies just really aren't doing it. So knowing that, could we build a platform to solve for those core issues and take that to the market? So that's how it started. And then it was really a journey of working with lots of different, and we got lucky. We were able to work with big banks, big retailers, aviation customers, all kinds of industries. And then 2 years into our journey, we found insurance, or insurance found us, really. And so it wasn't like I was like an insurance broker
Sure.
and I like identified this problem working at my company and being like, oh, I gotta fix it. It kind of reversed it.
So, you look at these businesses have ideas, they have execution, and the one data point that seems to be the most important in successful companies is kind of like the timing. Why do you feel like now is the timing for insurance or for what you're doing? Obviously, that 3% number of companies using AI is a big data point, but
Yeah.
I'm curious why you think or feel now is the time for this.
Yeah, no, totally. It's more specific to the insurance broker space where for many years they just didn't want to even talk about technology. They did what they did, and that was working.
Yeah.
But recently there's been a few insure tech companies that have broken through and shown that it's not easy, but if you commit to tech, it can actually be really effective in helping them be more efficient, make more money, all of those things. So that's only been the last like couple of years that's come about, where insurance brokers have been receptive to talking to people like me. So it was like really good timing where we finally realized that this was our space, and on their side they finally realized that like we shouldn't ignore those nerds anymore, because maybe there's something interesting that they have to say and can be helpful. So it's kind of like perfect timing on both ends.
What's you look out as kind of a visionary. You say, there's this world in 5 to 10 years that looks amazing. And, every day I'm sure you're like, wow, we're collecting this type of thing, or like the world could look like this. What does that world look like in the next couple of years?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I'm not here to necessarily predict like what's going to happen in 5-7 years, but I will say what I'm seeing, especially from an AI perspective, is there's been so much hype, very little delivery of that hype, unfortunately, which is tougher for companies like mine. But it really, what it's going to boil down to as we move forward in time is trust. So it's going to be like the winners in AI, and the people that are going to adopt it more are the ones that actually believe that the predictions and the technology is real, and actually providing real value, and not just some crazy algorithm that decided to do something. Which is why not only do you have to like build trust, but you have to be able to start explaining why you've created the predictions that you do predict. And the companies that are able to do that well and build interfaces that are easy to actually use, and not get too technical, and start understanding like use cases of actual people, and how they go about their day in life. I think that's when AI is really going to scale. But at this point, it's still siloed. It's still a bunch of data scientists sitting in a building, talking to themselves, making cool stuff that no one's ever going to use, not really talking to business units. So like that's what's got to change, and I think we'll get there, but a lot of companies are going to die along the way.
So I agree with you. If you can reduce the friction on adoption and then provide a great experience, that's a winner. And then kind of seems like you got a crystal ball, but on the opposite, like what's something you missed this past year, or what's something you learned that was unexpected? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, totally. And we've talked about this before. It's been interesting. So the company, so it's been around it's 4.5 years. First couple of years, we were pretty general, like I said, right? So we'd worked with so many different types of companies, different industries, all of that stuff. And once we like had that moment and decided to actually focus on insurance brokers, it's cliche, honestly, Zach. It's super cliche. But what I learned this year is like there's so much power in focus, in like really doing one thing, and like, you know, beating like everyone following the same drumbeat, which was not the case in our company for a long time. We were really exploring, looking around, and it's like it's again, it's super cliche. You know, sometimes, you know, I'll make fun of Y Combinator for their obsession of like the 3 months. You can do so much in 3 months. But man, you can do so much in 3 months when like everyone's focused. So like cliche, but genuinely unexpected for me and my team.
And what do you do to get like fired up and inspired? And, you know, you're taking on not taking on, you're partnering with a very interesting, difficult industry that's, you know, notoriously slow to change. Like what gets you fired up?
I mean, I think it's just that, right? Like the idea that we're still one of the first ones in on this space.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a secret. So anyone hearing this, please don't enter the insurance broker space until I've cleared it out. But no, like honestly, it's just it's the fact that it's an industry that's been around so long, very little disruption, very few companies have broken through, and that challenge is super exciting to me. And actually seeing the product work in action, and it's not novel to have like a machine learning system work in like a point solution at scale, which sounds maybe a little nebulous, but like that's hard to pull off. And I guess like I'm a masochist, which is why I do these startup things, but I just love that challenge of like actually making that work. And honestly, like the challenge of any company like starting anything, it's just so damn hard. It's like, it's literally like a miracle anytime a company can work. You know what I mean? Like so many different things need to fire at the same time. And, you know, it like waking up every day and trying and to achieve that is still exciting. So 4.5 years later.
Is there someone you kind of look up to, you respect, you admire, and, you know, why is that?
Honestly, like, yeah, I mean, all the time. It literally, it's not like there's like one person or one thing. It's just the people that get up every day and keep trying to do something new and create.
Yeah.
It is super inspiring to me. And it can be, you know, it can be some, you know, random sophisticated technologist, or literally like the person on Shark Tank selling cookies. Like it's both are really cool to me and like really exciting. And I'll still sit there even though like I deal with, like most people like me probably don't watch Shark Tank because, you know, we're dealing with VCs all day, but I still get fired up watching people take an idea and put it out into the world and like get beat up a little bit, but like keep going. And so like any story like that is super exciting.
It's pretty awesome. Just being around early stage companies, you know, and
Yeah.
kind of energy that I absolutely love what I do, what we do. We're going to put this out on our channels. The folks that end up watching this, what can they do to help your company achieve their goals?
No, I appreciate it. I mean, first and foremost, good vibes are important. So send them my way, please. It's hard enough out there. But yeah, I mean, anyone that is connected to the insurance industry, specifically with brokers, that knows anybody that wants to talk about helping them do their jobs a little bit better, make it a little bit easier with AI, I'd love to chat. But otherwise, just, you know, if anyone wants to connect, hit me up.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. This was fun.